Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just looking at a piece of art. We're basically going on an archaeological dig. We're going to try and unearth the hidden story inside one single, incredibly complex work. All right, let's get into it. Our whole journey really starts with this quote from the artist Pan Miś. It's so simple, so disarming, and it's our key, really. It's our entry point into a world where normal, conventional logic, it doesn't just bend, it completely shatters. And what a brilliant idea it is. So first things first, let's get acquainted with the artifact at the very center of our story. We're talking about the painting known as Duke Guernica, which translates to the spirit of the miner. Now, this piece was made between 2017 and 2020, and honestly, it's a whirlwind of action, all packed onto this tiny 40 by 40 centimeter board. But it's not just a painting, it's this wild mix of painting and sculpture, a style the curator calls 2.5D, where the figures are literally glued on top so they kind of jump out at you. It feels overwhelming, and you know what? That's entirely the point. According to the artist's own notes, there are 8 distinct characters fighting it out in this abyss. Every single one, from the miner himself to a Islamic demon named Licho, has their own complicated backstory, all tangled up in myth and the artist's personal history. But this is where our neat and tidy story starts to unravel. Okay, so this is where things start to get really weird. As we dive into these backstories, which were carefully put together by the artist's brother, Maciej, the chaos just gets deeper. We start running into these baffling contradictions, what the curator brilliantly calls logical glitches. So, get this. The main antagonist is called the Executioner of the Devil, and his job? Well, it's completely absurd. His whole purpose is to execute souls that are already dead. It makes no sense, right? And when you ask the artist about it, Pan Miś just says it was his brilliant idea. It's a logic that just defies logic. The character of Ladam is a perfect example of this shifting narrative. In one telling, she's the lover of the miner's brother. Okay, simple enough. But in another, she's the mother of the miner's own child, a child who is horrifically murdered. Her entire identity is a moving target, which makes it almost impossible to find a straight story. But here's the thing that really throws you. These aren't just minor details. The story says the miner's child is murdered, but the miner himself seems totally unfazed. Nothing. This emotional black hole is the most jarring glitch of all. It makes the artwork feel intentionally, almost defiantly, impossible to penetrate. For years, the curator just wrestled with this beautiful, maddening chaos. He was completely immersed in it, until one day, he made a breakthrough discovery that completely reframed the entire scene. You see, the official narrative, the story coming straight from the artist, always, and I mean always, accounted for 8 figures. 8 characters locked in this battle. That was the set number. But after just staring at this piece for countless hours, living with it, the curator felt something was off. You know that feeling? He felt this presence lurking in the shadows of the painting. Something was there that wasn't being counted. And then he found it, a 9th figure, hiding in the dark background, almost completely invisible, just a whisper in all that visual noise. The count was wrong all along. So who was this mystery character? The evil dwarf of Ash. Turns out he's the cruel ex-boyfriend of La Dame, and he was so deeply buried in the chaos, so lost in the darkness, that even the artist himself had completely forgotten that he'd painted him in there. Now, finding this 9th figure wasn't just about getting the headcount right. This was the key that unlocked the artwork's real truth. It revealed that all that chaos, it wasn't random at all. It was all centered on one incredibly powerful theme: injustice. The entire scene, with all its contradictions and brutality, is just a raw, emotional explosion of a world built on unfairness. A world of undeserved punishment and trauma that no one acknowledges. The miner doesn't deserve his fate. The child didn't deserve to die. And nobody seems to care. That is the logic of this world. So, in a world this brutal, this defined by injustice, where do you find any hope? Well, it comes from the most unlikely place you can imagine. It comes from our hero, the tiny, seemingly insignificant lost soul, who actually started out as one of the devil's helpers. And this brings us to this idea of the Volta, which basically means a moral turn, a change of heart. After seeing how profoundly unfair the miner's punishment is, This little damned soul does something amazing. It rebels. It switches sides and starts fighting to break the red chains of damnation that are binding the miner's legs. And that one selfless act, that is the hidden meaning of this entire painting. It's the emotional anchor in all the chaos. It's this quiet whisper of resistance, this suggestion that even in a completely hopeless world, a world drowning in injustice, empathy is still possible. Rebellion is still possible. So, what does all of this really tell us about the artist? Well, to understand this painting, you really have to understand the unique, brilliant, and yes, chaotic mind of Michał Walczyk, also known as Pan Miś. You see, Michal's creative process isn't governed by plans or linear logic. His brother says he creates in a creative fever. He doesn't operate on abstract ideas like math. He actually can't really count. And with a severe visual impairment of -12 diopters, his perception of the world is fundamentally different. He creates from a place of pure, raw, intuitive feeling. And that's why this artwork is really the product of this powerful, beautiful partnership between two brothers. On one side, you have Michał, the visionary, the one who creates from this raw, unfiltered feeling. And on the other, you have Maciej, the curator, the decoder, who painstakingly translates that feeling into a story for the rest of us. One provides the chaos, and the other finds the logic inside it. Which brings us to the most important point of all. Those contradictions, the forgotten figures, the narrative chaos, they are not mistakes. They're not flaws to be fixed. They are the genuine, authentic fingerprint of an artist who feels the world far more than he analyzes it. Like his brother Maciej puts it so perfectly, this is ultimately not a work of the mind, but of the heart. It's a testament to a totally different kind of truth, one that's based on emotional coherence, not narrative perfection. And so this incredible piece really challenges us to think about what meaning actually is. It leaves us wondering if, in a world that often feels just as chaotic as this painting, the deepest truths aren't found in flawless reason, but in profound, undeniable, and sometimes contradictory feeling.